Hello, this meeting is called to order. This meeting has been posted in compliance with the open meeting law. Since we're missing two members, Chairman Blair Davenport and Vice Chairman Ray Turner, we do have a quorum, so then we can meet and we will continue. Okay, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We are now open for public comment. Written comments may be submitted via the public comment forum. To comment during the meeting, members of the public may call 702-589-9629. And now the public comment period is open.
Madam Chair, if you want to just verify that nobody in the audience has any public comments regarding agenda items.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience who has public comment concerning the agenda today? Okay. Hearing none, then I think we can probably close the public comment. Okay. Moving on to the first item. For possible action, approval of the minutes of the September 28th, 2022 regular meeting.
Motion to accept the minutes as printed.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carried, and the minutes will be placed on file. Okay. Moving on to agenda item 2. For possible action, update on implementation of the committee's goals and priorities.
Didn't we do agenda item 1?
We just did. We approved the minutes.
Did we?
Yes, we did.
All right.
Okay. And those were approved and placed on file. So now we're on agenda 2. Everybody on the same page?
Yes.
Okay. So we have update on implementation of the committee's goals and priorities.
Madam Chair, Michael Mays, Community Development Director for the city. And so as we do every month, you have in your packet an update on the committee's goals. You will see that it reflects the City Council's recent approval of the Historic Preservation Ordinance. This will go into effect on November 3rd. And one of the other goals that's noted in your packet is the creation of the Historic Preservation Commission. That also goes, it becomes effective on November 3rd. And so your next meeting will be a Historic Preservation Commission meeting.
Okay.
And with that, I can answer any questions.
Okay, so since we move into the new code and new commission, can you elaborate on that a little bit? Tell me how many members we're going to have, and that starts November 3rd, or?
Well, no, the ordinance is effective November 3rd.
Okay,
But your next meeting, regularly scheduled meeting, would be the first Historic Preservation Commission meeting.
right,
It has the same 5 voting members, but part of what the council added is 2 ex officio members that would be experts in historic preservation that do not need to be residents. And we'll need to go through a process in posting that and having the council select those participants.
Okay, so, so that makes 7 members. So do you have to wait for the 2 new members to come on before we can meet again, or how does that
Again,
work?
they're just ex officio. They don't factor into quorum. They don't vote.
Okay,
They would just be here as advisory.
okay,
to
so
the
they
com-
do have to attend, though, every time, or?
Well,
No?
not every time. but
Okay,
yeah.
All right.
The intent by adding them was to provide some additional guidance and people that the commission could utilize as a resource.
okay, okay, that's good. All right, so do you have the date of the next commission meeting then, official?
Due to Thanksgiving, last year you decided that your November meeting will be on the last Tuesday in November.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't remember exactly, and I didn't have my calendar in front of me. Okay, so we'll be notified since it's the last Tuesday. Okay, very good.
Michael? Maybe if there's some people out there watching and not aware of these 2 added people, shall we say experts, maybe give a brief recap of what we're looking for. Maybe there's somebody out there in the audience watching this that might be interested in one of those positions, if they know what the city council is looking for, what kind of, credentials they're looking for. Maybe a brief recap on that, or somebody here might know somebody that has that. Maybe just kind of a brief outline, what kind of people we're looking for, fill those 2 spots.
Yes, in summary, people that maybe have an architectural license, a historic preservation consultant or expertise background, people that have been involved in historic preservation efforts within Southern Nevada, somebody that could be from academia. Again, the opportunity is to allow for people that would have some historic preservation background that the commission could then tap into as a resource as you are evaluating matters coming before the commission.
And they don't have to be a resident.
Correct.
Okay.
Perfect, thank you, Michael.
Michael, I can't remember the wording, but do the ex officio members have to meet the SOI standards for, what is it, Q something or other, quality? No, it's not quality. Qualifications for whatever. Is that wording in the ordinance?
I'd have to double check that. I don't have
Well,
that
that's
in
all
front
right,
of me, but-
I'll double check. It seems to me it is, but I'm not sure. But I do have a question. Can you just refresh my memory on when Northwind is coming back with the, is she coming in November?
So what we're going to be doing is sending out ahead of time her updates to the design guidelines with the intent of discussing in November.
Okay, in November. All right, thanks.
All right, very good. Any other comments?
Where's the save? Yeah.
Okay, hearing none, then we will be moving on to agenda item 3. For possible action, discussion regarding activities for Historic Preservation Day and award for 2023.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As you can see, has held the activities on the second Saturday in May. And for next year, that will be on May 13th. And the report notes that prior city council meetings would be on the 9th and 23rd in May. If you choose May 13th for HP Day, then announcement could occur at either the council's meeting on May 9th or April 25th. And on the second page of the report, it goes into timeline options, but that's more critical really to your activities for the award. Because obviously the committee will spend some months preparing for HP Day activities. We won't be promoting that till probably about March or April, since you usually choose May, if that's what you choose to do tonight. But for the award, which you normally like to have awarded by the time HP Day occurs, we need to do much earlier preparation for that, because typically you've wanted those free notices to go in the monthly utility mailers for that. So on the second page of the report, it goes over two options, depending on when you want to choose the winner of the award. Both of those options leave about 2 months open for voting purposes for the public. So with option one, it's a bit shorter timeline. If you want to choose the awardee at your last meeting in April, in which case then you just rely on one of the committee members to actually draft up the certificate language. For that situation, then you'd be looking at February for having the flyers and the utility mailers. And that would need to be ready by early January. The second alternative is if you want the committee to choose the awardee in March and then approve your award certificate language in April, then we'd need to get the flyers and the utility mailers in January, and the deadline for the flyer content for that would be early December. So you'll need to let us know which way you want to go, and then also included in the packet are screenshots from last year's nomination forms, because as you can see by this timeline, since we've only got, in the short case, about a month to get things ready, you'd need to let us know if there are any significant changes you want to that information that would then be posted online and mailed out.
Okay, well, we're short the chairman and the vice chairman tonight. So I would recommend that we table this until the next meeting, which is in November. There's still time to prepare everything, even if we did choose option two, which this has to be ready by December. But, you know, the flyer has to be ready, so things have to be stepped up a little bit by December. It would have to be into this right away. So, but I would suggest that we wait until the full committee's here and the chairman and the vice chairman are here, because they're going to be very involved. I'm going to be out of town. I'll be boarding a ship to Alaska May 10th, and it's going to be going out of Vancouver, so I'll probably be leaving around the 1st of May. So I'm not going to be able to be in the planning or implementation of this project. So it's going to fall on the shoulders of the chairman and the vice chairman. So I would suggest, is that okay with you guys if we wait till November to choose? Or do you think we can choose for them? I just don't want to do that exactly. I mean, I think they should be involved.
Well, it's always possible to change your minds, as you said. It's just that, keep in mind, we might have a heavier agenda next month because the plan is to hopefully have Northwind's guidelines back.
Yeah.
We'll be dealing with the new code. There's a possibility we may have some requests that will have to come to you before that. So I just wouldn't want that meeting to be overburdened. And as said, even if you make a choice tonight, you know, there's always the possibility
Okay.
that next month you can revisit
Okay.
it and change your mind.
That's fine. All right,
Yeah,
so
I'm thinking
what
we
do you
could-
think?
We could probably pick a date tonight, but the
All
only
right.
thing I just want to throw out, just a thought, I don't know if it means anything, you know, the 13th is, you know, is fine, but, you know, Mother's Day is the day after, you know, I mean, I don't know if that's going to make any difference to anybody, if they're going to, people want to be out of town to go visit their mom someplace, if we should maybe push to like the 20th.
Well,
I don't know if there's an
just for
interference thing.
reference, the committee has usually chosen that Saturday before Mother's Day. We've always brought it up that
No.
it's the same weekend, and for what, I can't recall the reasons the committee wanted it that weekend, but traditionally, they haven't cared about Mother's Day. They've,
Okay, no,
wanted
that's,
to do it
that's
then.
fine, I was just throwing it out there just for the discussion, I mean, doesn't make any difference to me, you know, the 13th is fine, the 20th is fine, whichever, so.
Okay, well, on option 1 and option 2, we have the Historic Preservation Day as the 13th. So is that okay with you, Charlie?
I
That
think we
weekend?
ought to just go with option 2. I think
Oh,
that's.
option 2?
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
most sensible thing.
that
Just the
look better to
flyer,
you?
Yeah, you get more time for the, yeah.
Okay, that's fine. How about you, Charlie? I mean, Glenn, I'm sorry.
Well-
Glenn, how about you? Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's fine, but, you know,
Do we need a motion?
Yeah.
No, I mean,
No?
this is more
Okay.
unofficial at this point, but I just
Okay.
want to clarify, Charlie, you said it would give you more time for option 2, but that does mean that the flyers have to be, your decisions have to be made a month earlier.
Well, right, the decision on the flyers, but there's more time. The flyers, there's more time for the community to see the flyers.
No, it'll still be the 2-month period before the deadline. The difference really
Oh.
between option 2 and 3 is whether or not you want to choose the awardee at one meeting
Oh,
and then
okay.
approve
Yeah,
the
yeah,
certificate language at another meeting,
Yeah, no,
which you usually don't do. In
Yeah.
the past, at least for the past couple of years, you've gone with the option 1 version.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, it does give us a little more time with the holidays and everything. So, okay, it's up to
Option
you
1?
two. Option 1?
option 1?
Okay,
Option 1, then.
all right, then
Whatever.
it's option 1.
Okay.
Okay,
Option 1 on the 13th.
and I'm
We ought to
sure
go
that'll
with
be
either option
fine,
1 or option 2, one or the other.
you know, because you got to get into full swing to get this done.
Okay.
Okay, very good. All right, then we're going to go with option 1.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
You know what, let's just do a formal action with that, if somebody
Okay.
could make that motion.
Okay, we're going to need a motion to formally enact option 1.
Okay, Glenn, make the motion.
I'd make a motion that we accept option 1 as presented, and Historic Preservation Day will be on May 13th.
Second.
Okay, very good.
You
All in
need to call
favor?
for a vote?
Yes.
Don't I put in
Okay, let's call for a vote.
Good.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. All right, then, next month, we will be at work to get this off the ground. Okay. Okay, we're now going to move on to agenda item 4. For possible action, discussion update on the status of properties in the historic district or other potentially eligible properties. Any comments on this?
Well, the only comment I would make would be just to clarify that 418 Ash, they are moving those pilasters back to comply with the right-of-way requirements for the fence. And I'm happy to see that. I assume that's what that is, so it complies with, well, this is something I've been unclear about before. There are no guidelines for fences. So, which Susan has told me on many occasions. So, it complies with city code, but it doesn't have anything to do with historic preservation.
The guidelines that we've been using for several years don't directly state anything about fences. The reason that request originally went to the committee in 2020 was because of the guideline standard that refers to uninterrupted front yards.
Right.
And so we brought that, ideally, the guidelines would state a preference one way or the other, whether or not there should be walls in front yards. It doesn't, but we brought it to you on that other standard. Now, what is referenced in this staff report is the demolition permit for the posts that are in the right-of-way. However, they had also previously applied for a permit for the new posts. So it's presumed that if they move forward, new posts will be built 3 feet back so that it will be on their own property.
So this still doesn't comply with the guideline, which I know is non-mandatory for the continuous lawn. So there's still that guideline there. But anyway, I mean, I'm happy to see they're doing what they were supposed to do. I wish they'd tear down never mind. But, yeah.
Okay, Susan, I'm just a comment for my own thinking. Now, from now on, now that we have the new code in place, then everything from now on goes under that code, right?
Well, the guidelines that we've been using for the last several years are still in effect because we have not adopted new guidelines yet. That's what the committee is still working on with Northwind Resources. So as those progress, ultimately, the committee will be giving their blessing, so to speak, or recommending approval of new guidelines, and then those would go to the city council for adoption. However, as for the current situation, the guidelines and the code and any activities coming before the committee are still limited to what requires a building permit. Because if something doesn't require a building permit, there's nothing we can do to stop somebody. And fences up to 4 feet in height do not require a building permit. Retaining walls up to 2 feet in height do not require a building permit. Therefore, even though your future guidelines may directly state a recommendation that there be no walls in front yards, because no permit is required in most circumstances for those, we won't have a legal mechanism to stop that.
Okay,
But for clarification, though, the guidelines that exist right now, the present guidelines, the new ordinance requires that guidelines be met, I believe, doesn't it?
They've always stated where a permit is required, because again, if
Well, right, no, I
Yes.
understand that, but if a permit is required, they have to follow the guidelines that are in existence right now. We have a set of guidelines.
Correct. The current guidelines under the previous code that is still in effect for another week state that items come before the committee if a permit is requested and it does not comply with the guidelines. That way then permits that comply aren't held up. Under the new code, there is that approval matrix that distinguishes between contributing properties and non-contributing properties.
Right.
And so that may be different where now, going forward, items that comply may still need to come before the committee if they're a contributing property. If the matrix says it comes before the committee, it'll come before the committee whether it complies with the guidelines or not, is my understanding.
I'm just thinking out loud, since this is all so new to all of us, really. I mean, even though some of us here didn't primarily have the original input, so we're not as familiar, with it as some of the other members that did have the input. So would there be a way that, I don't know, when you bring this to us, if you could maybe make like a small italics explaining where it fits in the code, or is that okay, or?
As we move forward and bring requests to you, just like we do now, we'll
Yeah.
tell you right in the staff report what parts of the code apply and what don't, and what requires your approval and
Okay.
what doesn't. We'll make it all very clear.
All right, I think that would be very helpful.
Oh, yes, we'll do that for you.
Okay, all right, thank you. And I think, too, it's helpful for anybody listening in, or if they're actually working with it, too. All right, thank you very much. All right, are there any other comments? Okay, moving on to agenda item 5. For possible action, committee discussion regarding potential agenda items for upcoming Historic Preservation Committee meetings. Anybody ideas? Go ahead, Glenn.
Yeah, a couple of things. At last month's meeting, I had requested that we get on this month's agenda to talk about the new upcoming guidelines, shall we say, but it did not get on the agenda, so I'd like to request that to be on the November agenda.
To clarify, no, what was requested was that we would get revised guidelines back to you to give you about a month to review. So the intent is by the end of this month, you will receive the revised guidelines, but it was always expected they would come back in November.
Well, I wanted, let's see if I,
Did you say by the end of the month, Michael? By the end of this month, we will have the next edition?
Correct.
So that's,
The committee had asked for more than the usual review time.
right, yeah.
And so you would receive it by the end of this month so that you'd have more time to review it before the next.
Okay, so we can
meeting.
expect in the next week then
well,
we'll have those.
what I had requested, it's in minutes, requested an agenda item to discuss the outcome of the pending city council vote on the proposed new preservation ordinance.
Oh, well, that was addressed under item 2 with the committee goals where we discussed it.
And the matrix?
Yeah,
Okay.
because several of the action items were related to the new historic preservation ordinance.
Are you allowed to point that out to him so it's clear where it was addressed?
Yeah, it's in the
Are you
action
Sure
items.
about that?
Well, no, because, I was hoping to have a discussion about some of the upcoming things with it, some of the comments that were made and such, we could address them, and in case there's anybody in the audience want to talk about it, that we'd have that opportunity to discuss what, how it came about to be, what the city council decided and such, but,
Can we add that for next month then? What Glenn's thinking?
So it would be just to it would just be to discuss the ordinance?
well, yeah, in a matter of speaking, how it's gonna affect things, and, I had it more clear in my mind last month. Just, at that time, though, we weren't sure which way the council was gonna go, yay or nay.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that there was an avenue to open up to talk about if it had been a nay or a yay, what what we would do as a committee, going forward. So that was kind of, at the time, we didn't know which way it was gonna go. Now we know what the result is.
Yeah, so I apologize. I thought it was just to report out the results, and that's what I did under agenda item 2. If there's something specific you want to discuss about the new ordinance as an agenda
No, there
item?
was just a general discussion, because like I say, when we made the request, we did not know if the city council was gonna say yay or nay on it. And I wanted to have the opportunity that, that whichever way they went with it, that we would have the opportunity to discuss it. If they had voted no, shall we say, we've been able to discuss, okay, we as a committee, what do we think of it, and what do we want to do about it as time marches on? Just live with it, or push it, try and push it again.
So I guess for clarification, since they approved the ordinance, what would you like to discuss next month regarding the adopted ordinance?
Well, kind of what can we do and can't do with it, how do we react to it if somebody's doesn't want to be in compliance, or how are we going to react to the upcoming rules as they come into play? I mean, just kind of general discussion with a little help, guidelines from our partners, the city staff. So, I mean, it's kind of redundant at this point. I mean, they're kind of moot at this point, I guess, but.
I guess I would suggest if any of the individual committee members would like to sit down with staff and we can kind of go over the ordinance and the procedures in detail, we'd be happy to set up those meetings. on an individual basis. If that, it sounds like that's kind of what you're looking for in terms of discussion, that might be the more effective way to accomplish that.
Okay.
Actually, Michael, I think that'd be great, because I do have some questions and concerns and so on, but I need to formulate them. But I'd love to sit down with you or Susan or whoever. Tammy, I could sit down and Tammy would set me straight. But anyway, yeah, because there are questions about sort of the mechanics of the thing, how it's actually gonna work. But I don't know that we need to discuss them as part of the agenda. Yeah.
Well, I think this is going to be a learning curve for all of us. So, we just have to go a little bit at a time, and we'll get familiar with it. And it's right there in black and white, so we just have to do what they say, right? So, okay, good. All right, any other comments?
Yes, I do. Not sure how we should go about this, but I was asked about it, and I'd like to maybe put it on the agenda, talk about it, because can't really discuss it here, but, like our hotel is, towns, it's got the National Historic Site registration and stuff like that. And I wondered if we could maybe talk about it at our next meeting about, like this building, the water treatment plant, getting those on the national register, not as contributing parts of the historic district, but as historic sites on their own, as we've done with the hotel. I don't know what's all encompassed in that, if these buildings would even meet the criteria, but I'd like to get a conversation started about if we can do that or not.
Would that be in the matrix, Michael, like future?
No, that would be something that would need to be a separate agenda item about the process for individually listing property on the National Register.
Actually, Michael, last meeting, I suggested that we look at the 65 properties, and I think this would fall under that same general sort of thing, so, because Mooney has listed 65 properties that are eligible for listing, in her opinion. And I suggested that perhaps we could, as an educational outreach, contact those 65 properties and see if they're interested in being listing. I mean, that would be part of this sort of.
We'll do an agenda item regarding the process for National Register nomination for individual properties for next month.
Yeah, I was thinking just kind of start this with, our public buildings and stuff like that. I agree with Charlie, in time, go to these people, try and get, if they're interested in doing it, but I think if we start with our public buildings, we kind of lead by example. So if we can have that for an agenda item, I mean, we can see how
That's a
far.
good thing to
see how
look
far
forward
it-
to,
Yeah, how far it
get
all
them on the
goes.
National Register.
Michael, can we include, because there's something that, there is a Boulder City Historic Register. And I think that needs to be looked at. If we could do it under that agenda item or in the future. Because my understanding is that the Boulder City Historic Preservation or Historic Register is essentially the Janus report.
No,
It's the properties that are listed on the Janus report.
correct. I mean,
Right,
we have
yeah.
the Janus report for the public is the 1983 nomination to the National Register. That's on our website. Our city code that is going out of effect, but I believe the new one refers to it as well, is the Boulder City Register is just simply a listing of addresses in the district. So we've had that for years. and
Right,
It's
and-
on the website.
And I think that needs to be looked at.
Well,
Because how do you have properties that aren't historic or no longer exist? How can you have them on the register?
because the properties still exist within the historic district. And even from 1983, there were many properties in the historic district that were not historic.
Right, I understand that.
Because
yeah.
buildings change over the
Yeah.
time. Those properties do not, those addresses and properties do not get removed from the register if they happen to be vacant or if buildings change. The district boundaries are as per the 1983 nomination to the National Register of
The
Historic
district
Places.
boundaries are.
Correct, so
But the
every-
properties within that district aren't listed individually.
We're kind of going
You're-
Oh, we're
beyond,
getting,
Yeah,
we're getting
yeah,
sidetracked.
you're,
But
but I was just trying to clarify what you meant, how we should look at the register, because the register is just simply a listing of the properties within the boundaries. That's what it is.
So it's not like the state register or the
No,
national
not
register?
at all. No.
And then basically it becomes contributing or non-contributing.
Well, so far, our registry doesn't address that at
doesn't,
all.
okay.
It's a separate document for that. The registry, per our code, just says it's a listing of properties within the boundaries of the historic district.
Okay,
And basically, you get a summary of that every month at the
Right.
back of your packet,
right.
you know.
Yeah. And that remains like forever. I mean, even if,
Yeah.
So there's
Unless-
no way by looking at the register whether or not you have a property that is historic.
That's correct,
Yeah.
because,
It's just a property, vacant
Exactly.
lot or, yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And I
like I
think
said,
that needs to be
it's
looked
not
at.
as if 100% of the buildings were historic, even in 1983.
Well, no, I know
when
they
the
weren't. I
district
know
was
they weren't,
created,
exactly, yeah.
so
Yeah.
getting back to the agenda item, what I have for a request for next month is that we discuss the process for listing individual buildings on the National Registry. And we'll have Courtney Mooney here regarding the design guidelines, and so she can go into detail about the steps that are involved in that process. Are there other agenda items for next week, next month, besides the National Registry discussion and then obviously discussion on the design guidelines?
And for the record, HP Day and the award will be a standing item and from now to next May.
Yes.
right. Okay, all right, very good. Any other comments? Okay, moving on from the agenda items, now we go into public comment. And each person has 5 minutes to speak at the discretion of the mayor chair. Comments made during the public comment period of the agenda may be on any subject. All remarks should be addressed to the city council board or whole, not to any individual member of the council board or the audience or the city staff. Okay, then we'll move into public comment. Okay, if you want to telephone in, you can call in by calling 702-293-9208.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. This is where I always get mixed up. Okay, so if you're going to call in, then call in at 702-589-9629.
Did you ask for anybody present?
Is there anyone present that would like to make a comment? And I see there was a gentleman here, but I don't see him now.
He left.
Okay. Okay, so we'll just wait for a minute, see if anybody calls in. Okay, it looks like it's kind of quiet on the home front tonight. So with that, then the public comment then will be closed. And with that, all practical purposes,